Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our online IBC. My name is Marina, and I will be with you for the next 30 minutes. With me today, Feridun, our vendor partner, Venera Technologies from the USA. Good morning, Feridun.
Good morning and good evening to you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you doing?
Great, very good.
Okay, so Venera Technologies is our quality control partner. They produce the high quality control software. And recently they updated their software tools with some new features. And these new features we are planning to discuss in the next minutes with Feridun. But before we go into these new fresh features, can you please let us, our audience, know what Venera Technologies does in general? What your software is responsible for?
Sure. So we are a quality control software company specializing on cloud-based SaaS QC as well as on-premise QC. And so our cloud-based QC solution is called Quasar, and the on-premise version called Pulsar. They have the same core QC technology, which deals with QC of media files, containers, video, audio, the different tracks of content that can be QC'd. And so that the focus is to provide services and help to post-production houses, production houses, broadcasters, anyone who's dealing with media content.
Okay, great. And what are the standard features of your software, and what tests and features are special to your product?
So we cover a broad range of video, audio artifacts, and verifying for compliance for a variety of media formats. The most common formats that are used worldwide for media is covered by Pulsar and Quasar. We also have a series of ready-to-go test plans, or we call them templates, that are set up for platforms such as Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, cable labs, so broadcasters. So they're all ready to go so for our users, so they don't necessarily have to build these templates from scratch. They can use those. So that's really quite helpful. And we have a series of, as I mentioned, checks and verifications for video and audio. But we also do things, for example, we can verify HDR content. We have the most extensive set of checks for IMF packages. We can deal with 4K content. We can also do Harding PSE. PSE is photosensitive epilepsy. So we can verify for that content as well.
Okay, so I heard that this is your specific feature, this Harding PSE. Okay. Yeah, sounds very impressive. I mean, looks like a customer who needs the QC software can find anything that they need by buying your software. Yeah.
Absolutely.
When we're talking about the products, you have two products like Pulsar and Quasar. How do they differ from each other?
Sure. So in terms of the actual QC work, the QC technology and core QC capabilities, they're both the same. They do the same type of verification of content. The difference comes in that Pulsar is for on-premise customers whose content is still on-premise within their facility, and Quasar is for cloud. So for customers who have already migrated or thinking of migrating to cloud, Quasar is the right solution. It is a native cloud QC solution, and by that we mean we didn't just put Pulsar into a VM in cloud and call it a cloud solution. We actually have built an architecture for support of cloud, so that, for example, we can automatically spin up instances of Quasar to run jobs. It's a usage-based pricing, and so also a lot of security built in. So these two platforms serve all of our customers, whether they're on premise, they can use Pulsar, And if they're in the cloud, they can use Quasar.
Okay, great. And can you please name the typical customers for both cases, for on-premises
Sure.
and cloud? And what are the business processes behind these customers?
Sure. So anyone who's dealing with media content who needs to have the content verified can use our product. So it's post-production houses, which they do deal with a lot of media content, studios themselves, broadcasters, independent editors. In fact, we deal with a lot of independent content producers who want to submit their content to, for example, Amazon Prime. We are one of the vendors recommended by Amazon Prime. So if they're sending content to Amazon Prime that needs to be checked before it's sent, they could use our product. So both either Pulsar or Quasar can be used for either platform. And the business process is pretty straightforward. So as part of their workflow, as they have edited their content, they're ready to send it out, or they have received a piece of content before they actually start working on it, they would want to QC it. And they would QC that media file with a template. And that template could be very specific to their needs, what the kind of things they want to check, or if they're submitting their content to one of the well-known platforms, such as Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu and others, as I mentioned, we already have templates built. So they would essentially ask Pulsar or Quasar to check this particular media file with this particular template, and then they look at the report to see whether there were any errors or warnings and if it passed or not. So if it passed, great. If they failed, the reports give a lot of details in terms of at what location in the file it occurred, what the issue was, and a thumbnail, so they could really see what the problem is that our QC solution has found. And then they can go fix it, run another QC, verify the content is good before they move to the next step and deliver it to their end point.
That sounds very impressive and looks like it saves a lot of time.
It can save a lot of time, because then, particularly if if an operator has to sit and watch the entire movie every frame by frame, it's easy to miss, and some things are not quite visible, and there could be metadata issues, there could be compliance issues that they may miss. And by using automated tools like Pulsar and Quasar, they can save a lot of time and have more confidence that the software can catch everything that they may have missed by by looking away or missing something on the screen.
Okay, and you are also developing your products constantly, as far as I know. So let's then jump to the new features of Pulsar and Quasar. What are they?
Sure.
If you could briefly explain that, and then after that we will go into detail and discuss each new feature. Okay.
Sure. So essentially what we do is that approximately every 3 months or so, we have a new release. And so it's very frequent release, because we're in constant contact with our customers and get feedback from them in terms of items that they're into, features that they're interested in, either enhancing what we already have or expanding or adding new features. So that's an ongoing process for us. And we get a lot of feedback from studios, broadcasters, as new things happen, new things come up, new issues come up, and those requests come in. So, I mean, we'll get into some details, but for example, slate detection is one of the latest things we have added, because some of the studios have asked us, they want to be able to identify the slate and be able to know whether the slate exists or not. Just a little background and explanation. In typical content, as the screen shows, in the typical media content, somewhere along in the beginning of the file, there is for lack of a better word, a card that's considered a slate, which includes information about the content. It could be things like its duration, its name, and it could also have what's the resolution, what's the bit rate, all additional information in the slate. There are a lot of times that they, as part of the QC, they want to make sure that the slate is there. And so they could, that piece of information exists. Or there are cases in which customers, they don't want to see a slate in the file because they've already taken care of it. They want it to be just purely the image, the content, not slate. So what we have added now is the ability to verify whether the slate is there or not. So if the customer says, I don't want a slate in my file, then if the slate is there, Pulsar or Quasar will report it as an error. And if the customer says, I do want to find a slate in there, and if we don't find the slate, then we can report an error. And so that allows the customer to very quickly know that the content meets their requirement, whether it's existence of the slate or the absence of the slate. So that's one of the latest things we have added. We will continue to enhance and improve it, but that's what is in this software now.
So it means that this new check helps to somehow also save cost and money, save cost and increase the efficiency and all that stuff.
Right. Because one less thing for the operator to check. This is something that the system can easily check. So instead of operator having to worry about looking for slate plus everything else that they would want to look for, this is something that can be automated and one less thing for the operator to worry about. So every step of the way, by adding these features, removing one more headache from a QC operator or a editor, we are helping them save time, save money, and be able to get through the process faster.
Great. Yeah. Okay. And you started to talk about a new feature. Sorry.
Yes. So, So the one of the other features we have added is detection of specific types of graphics in the content. For example, in the US, there is a notion of an FBI warning card, and it's essentially a frame that warns the user from duplicating or making a second copy of the content, that it being illegal and so on. So for traditionally for DVD type of content, that was always a requirement to have that at the beginning of the file. Now, as the file moves through for broadcasters and other usages, then they may not want to have that FBI warning to show up in the file. So now we can actually detect and report back, because most of the time the users are now saying that they don't want to see that. And some of the legacy content still has the FBI warning card as part of the file. And so we can now detect and report so the user knows, I need to remove this. Again, another thing that would be time consuming, that you have to look through, the operator has to look through the file, which can now be detected and so they can take care of it. The other thing is that in some cases, independent producers or generally anybody who's creating content, they may put a URL of their website or their entity or the company at the end of the content or the beginning content as a way of promoting where this content's coming from or promoting that URL. That may be okay for some, but there are some platforms that they do not allow that. And so again, an operator would have to be watching the movie, looking for to see whether in the beginning or the end a URL shows up as part of the frame. And so we got this request from some of our customers saying that they want to verify that there's no URL as part of the frame. And as the slide showed, we can detect the presence of the URL, and we can report that back to the operator so they can say, there's an issue here on this particular frame. The URL is showing, so they can go back, remove that URL, remove the frame, and fix it.
Okay, very useful, I believe, in this case. Yeah.
Yes.
I have heard that there are also some new audio tests. What are those?
Yeah, so in terms of audio, one of the relatively new requirements, particularly started with Netflix, but others are also requiring, is that, first, a little background. In the past, the audio had almost always been part of the media file. So you have your video, you have your audio, and it goes is together as one file. Now, more as we move forward, there are a lot more instances in which the audio piece can come separate from the video. So the media that you're actually QCing could be just the video itself, or could be the audio itself. And the audio could come at a different time, so that somebody may have received, a post-production house may have received the video already, and the audio comes a day later, a couple of days later. And so they need to be able to QC the audio along with that video when it arrives. And so the new feature is our ability to just QC just what is called the audio stem. So the audio itself as a separate piece, as a stem, comes separately. So our pulsar and quasar now are capable of detecting and QCing the audio stems by themselves, which again saves the operator time and cost, because now this is a new way of delivering stuff. They don't have to have the whole content together, be able to QC it. They can QC them separately. So that's another advantage, another piece that we have added. One of the other things that we have added recently is detection of what's called a mosquito tone, which is kind of a strange name, but it is, it comes from mosquitoes. And what it is that a very specific frequency of audio, which is interestingly enough, not detectable by adults, but detectable by younger people. And so it could be disturbing if that sound is there, and an older operator, an adult operator, would not hear it. And then it would be disturbing for younger adults. And so we have added that feature in. So now Pulsar and Quasar can detect that audio and can report it back, so it can be taken care of. It gives you the location, specific time code where that particular mosquito tone may exist, and the duration of it. And then the operator, then the QC operator will know where the issue is, and they can take care of it.
Very interesting feature. I never heard about that. As usual, I learned so many new from you in our sessions.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Are there any new features for the reports as well?
Yeah, so one of the other requests that we had received from our customers was that typically our reports had been in HTML format on a browser viewing, as well as a PDF, which could be then emailed to someone or kept for future reference. More and more, as Pulsar and Quasar get integrated into workflows, people are interested in receiving the report in different formats. And so we have added the capability to generate our QC report in JSON format, which then can be easily parsed and used as part of the workflow, so that if the workflow includes the automatic submission of the file to be QC'd, as the QC job is done, the report can also be automatically parsed by that workflow, and then various pieces of it taken out, the number of errors, number of warnings, the type of errors there are, all those things can be parsed out. And then so decisions can be made what to do next. So that has been a request that we implemented a little while ago to allow users to have the report in JSON format. That's one. And the other one is that we now also produce the results, the reports in Excel format, so that in a kind of an Excel spreadsheet for customers who want to deal with it in a spreadsheet. So that's also available now.
Yeah, I think it's very useful to have the different opportunities of different formats for different group of customers, because everyone needs different. And when you offer that, that's great. Now let's go then to another feature, the new one, the RefQ. I believe that is the largest update in your software. That's what it is. What it's about at all.
Okay. So this is something we're really excited about. A RefQ, or reference-based QC, so we short name it to RefQ, is the notion that you may or may not know, but a piece of content that has been generated could be duplicated, or a variety of versions of it, up to 300 to 400 different variants of a media file can be created. And it's because, for different regions of the world, different resolutions, different cuts. So a piece of content could have many different variations.
Mm-hmm.
What becomes difficult is that all those variations need to be verified, need to make sure that they are correct. And so typically there is the original piece of content, which is the main one that has been checked and it's all good. So that's the gold version. Mm-hmm. And so now we have all these other versions that have been created. Perhaps they have versions created because the original version is English, and now they want to create one for German audiences. And so some of the textual pieces in the content may need to be changed from English to German and other things. So customers have been looking for a reference-based QC, meaning that if I have a piece of content that is considered good and valid, I want to compare all my other variations against that piece of content. So that's the notion of the reference-based QC, is I'm referring to another piece of content, which is my gold, my main valid one, and I want to compare the rest with it. So this notion of RefQ QC is that we, instead of typical QC process where we have a file, we have a template, and we check the file against that template, now we, as part of the input to the system, we ask for the file that needs to be tested and the file that needs to be the reference file. And then Pulsar and Quasar, and then right now it's implemented in Quasar in the cloud, compares the two. Doesn't need a template. It knows one reference is the main reference, and then it uses the other one to compare. Mm-hmm. So here are some examples of the things that the RefQ can detect. So it looks like, they're the two on the left-hand side. You see the test file, and on the right-hand side, you see the reference file. And it may not be noticeable to the naked eye, but the active frame in the reference file covers the entire frame, and there are only like 10 pixels of black on either side, whereas in the test file, there for some reason has been shrunk, and so it's 20 pixels. So that's hard to notice, but it is important for the QC process. So RefQ then can look at both frames from the test file and the reference file, and then look at it and say, these two are not the same. So it will report it as an error. At this frame, at this location, these frames are not the same. Mm-hmm. So that's one example. Mm-hmm. Let's go to the next one.
Yeah.
Let's show the next slide. So the other one that is shown here is where the test file and the test file and the reference file, they're the same, except, as I mentioned, the text, if it's a written text, may have been changed because it's going from English to German or to Spanish or something else. And the operators want to verify that indeed those two are not the same, they're different. So it will catch that, it will report that. Whether the operator thinks that's valid or not, that's their choice. It's, it has to be different because this one is English, the other one has to be Spanish. Yeah. Or if they should be the same, that they can RefQ and report that as well. Mm-hmm. So that's another example. There is the third example in which the content is supposed to be the same, but there's some textual difference. As you can see on the screen, the big bulletin board on one side on the test file has writing in it. On the right-hand side, it doesn't have writing in it, and that's a mistake. So this happens to be the test file is an SDR, a standard dynamic range file, and the reference file is an HDR file. And somewhere in the process of the conversion, the text was removed. And this would be very hard to catch by the operator, so that as they go through the whole thing. So this can be automated. RefQ can actually detect that and report that back and say, these two frames are not the same. They're supposed to be the same, but they're not the same.
Mm-hmm.
And the final one that I wanted to show you is that this is actually pretty interesting. When you create two different versions of the same file, one is an HDR content, the other one is SDR content, the structure of the frames should be the same. So even though obviously the HDR content is brighter and is more vital, and SDR content looks a little duller and is not as colorful, which is the nature of SDR versus HDR. But if the two frames are structurally the same, then that will not be an error. So RefQ is smart enough to look for structural differences and ignore things like the HDR versus SDR. And so that gives an advantage that you can compare the two and only look for issues where there are structural differences and not because of the brightness of HDR versus SDR. So that's what the RefQ does. It allows users to compare, customers to compare their content with a reference file and detect and it reports back the issues where the structure of the two, equal frames, that the same frame on the reference file and the test file, if they're not the same, they're all reported. And that allows the user to be able to quickly check the variations and compare it with the original to make sure they're the same.
Yeah, I can imagine it might be very popular in some areas and by some customers. What are the customers? What are the users, potential users of such a feature? Can you please elaborate?
Sure. So mostly larger studios that do generate these variety of versions of the software would be interested in that. And in fact, the request came from one of these large studios that requested that. So any studio, any media company, any post-production house that has to deal with multiple versions of the same file, same media file, same title, that now has 10, 15, 20, 30 different versions of it, would be able to take advantage of this feature to verify that all those variations are the same as the original. So it speeds up their work.
I can see. And what might be the investments in the software, and how can this be paid back then?
Sure. So the investment in the software is it depends on if our customers are using the Pulsar on-premise solution. It's a perpetual license that they purchase with an annual support fee, and if they're using the Quasar cloud version, that one is a usage base, so they pay on a monthly basis based on what their usage is. And the payback for them is the fact that they really, number one, can save time and resources in terms of being able to process and QC more and more content in a less amount of time using the same operators. Particularly if you think about detecting things that will take time, such as that slate detection we talked about, the URL detection we talked about, or the RefQ, comparing multiple variations with the reference file. All those things take time. And if these were to be done manually, it would be time consuming for the operator and for that entity to be able to do a good job. A lot of times in the past, because of how time and resource intensive these works are, they would do spot checks. So they would check a little bit in the front, a little bit in the middle, a little bit at the end, and if it was all okay, then it was fine. But obviously, there are a lot of opportunities for mistakes and missing something because simply you're not seeing it. It could be somewhere that you didn't check. Now, with Pulsar and Quasar, the entire file, end to end, can be checked. So you don't have to take a chance, number one. Number two, there are a variety of checks that maybe it was possible for the operator to miss, which computer doesn't miss. So we can detect those. And all that can be done in a fraction of time that it would take the operator to do. So that all saves time and money, so that the businesses, the customers, can actually take care of more of business in less amount of time. So that investment in the software that they make, it pays off by their savings in their overall cost as they go on, and as their business grows. That software is fast, that it can take care of additional content as it comes through, still saving them time, so they don't have to necessarily add more staff or not be able to take additional jobs, because with the use of Pulsar and Quasar, they can still do the full QC of the files and be able to meet their needs for their customers.
Okay. I believe saving time and money and any cost is very important for any business, because then they have more time for doing their job. Thank you, Feridun, for talking about these new features, for presenting them to us, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being with us in this session about the new features of the quality control software by our vendor partner, Venera Technologies. You can meet Feridun and our team just after this session in the coffee bar. And if you have any questions, you can ask them. You can also request a demo. And also, please don't forget to come next week on Thursday. We will host a live guided demo of the Venera quality control software. Thank you very much once again, and see you